Today, we're flying on British Airways Business Class Club World Suites on their A350-1000 from London Heathrow to Toronto Pearson Airport. Our trip starts off here at Terminal 5 in London Heathrow. This is what the check-in area looks like. As a business class passenger, you get access to fast track, so check-in and security was quite fast. There is, of course, lounge access. The British Airways lounge is quite modern with a decent amount of seating. I would say the best place to sit, though, is this observation area with huge windows and sweeping views of the apron. It's breakfast time right now, and they have all the British classics like baked beans and roasted tomatoes. It's all quite decent. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Oh, and in case you were wondering, yes, it is always 5 o'clock somewhere inside the lounge as well. Alright, as much as I enjoyed stuffing my face with baked beans since I was previously a 90-year-old British woman in my previous life, it is now time to get boarding for our flight.
6:8 inside.
Thank you.
I want to know more about it.
Our A350 has a 1-2-1 configuration in business class, and the cabin is actually really stunning. Despite some scratches and normal wear and tear, which can be expected after being released for around 5 years or so, the Club World Suites really are good looking. They're nice and modern, there is a good amount of storage space, but the best part is that British Airways has consistency. All of their A350s and 777s across the fleet flying out of Heathrow have the Club World Suites. That way, you know exactly what you can expect. Unless there's some sort of freak aircraft swap and you end up on one of their A380s that haven't been retrofitted yet and still have the old cabins. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I love the contrast of this white cross stitch on the seats. Very classy. After being offered a welcome drink and a very, very scalding hot towel, it's now time for the safety video, which is actually really amusing and reminds me of an episode of Bridgerton.
Larger devices, including laptops, must be switched off and placed in your luggage for takeoff and landing. Please unplug your devices from the sockets. They must also be switched off and unplugged when not being used during the flight. If you do lose your device within your seat, please don't move the seat yourself. Ask a member of crew for some help.
Shortly after takeoff, it's now time to eat. Here's a quick look at the drink menu as well as the food that we'll be eating. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like to read them in more detail. First, I started with their ginseng cocktail. It tasted like a warm vacation on a beach. It was served with these rosemary salted nuts, which were delicious, although I do find it surprising that most airlines still serve nuts when so many people seem to have nut allergies these days. Thankfully, I'm not allergic to nuts though. For the appetizer, I get the mango and spiced watermelon chai. This was light and refreshing and also really, really beautifully plated. There was also a small side salad, which was healthy but boring. Thankfully, I was able to offset the salad with some carbs and butter. This giant bread roll was actually really, really tasty. Next came the main dish. I went for the railway lamb curry, served with 5-spice vegetables and basmati rice. While I do think the presentation could use some work, this was flavorful and had a really good kick to it. The lamb was also quite tender, so this is going to be a win for me. Finally, we finish off with some dessert. I go for a British classic, the sticky toffee pudding. It was moist and tender and had the perfect amount of sweetness to it. Now that lunch is done, let's check out the Amenity Kit and other goods. The Amenity Kit is a white pebbled leather from the White Company. It has all the essentials: an eye mask, earplugs, dental kit, socks, the White Company lip balm, moisturizer, and a relaxing pulse point roll-on in case you get anxiety while flying. I like it. It's minimal and classic, just like their cabin is. There's also a pillow, a seat cover, and a blanket, all by the White Company once again. Now let's go check out the washroom. Unlike the sleek-looking cabin, the washroom is kind of a disappointment here. And not just because the garbage was broken, because these things do happen sometimes, but because nothing here was touch-free. Not even the sink was automatic, which I feel like should be a bare minimum these days. Or maybe I'm just too much of a germaphobe. Anyone else? There was some soap and hand cream from the White Company again, and I'm not really sure what was happening here, but it really grossed me out. everything just felt really sterile and dry in here with zero personality. Alright, let's head back to our seats now. Back at my seat, they seem to have turned off all the lights and everyone is sleeping for some reason. I find it really odd since it's only 1 p.m. at our destination in Toronto and 6 p.m. at our origin in London. If you're from the UK, please let me know if it's normal to be sleeping at 6 p.m. there. Since everyone is sleeping, I figure now is a good time to go into lie flat mode and pretend like I'm sleeping too, even though I'm not. In lie flat mode, the seats measure 79 inches or 6.6 feet, and the arm width between the armrests is around 21 inches. This is what the foot space looks like when you're in lie flat mode. It's a little bit tight, so if you have large feet, it might be a little bit of an issue. Truthfully, I'm not exactly keen on sleeping at 6 p.m. UK time or 1 p.m. Toronto time, so let's check out the IFE and headphones. The headphones are just kinda so-so, they get the job done, but you could also probably bring your own as well. As for the IFE, it's a fixed screen and 18.5 inches. The screen was responsive, and there was more than enough to last you for this transatlantic flight. The TV shows had full seasons available, and of course, you could also use the remote to control the IFE. It's now time for our pre-arrival meal, which was one of my absolute favorite things to do, afternoon tea. I did say I was a 90-year-old British woman in my past life after all. The little finger tea sandwiches were absolutely delicious, and what's there not to love about clotted cream smeared generously onto a scone with some jam? As for the sweets, there was a miniature eclair and a very decadent chocolate brownie. I washed it all down with some Earl Grey tea because what's afternoon tea without the tea? Plus, they serve the tea with a side of Walker's shortbread and a Lindor chocolate. You can never have enough little treats as far as I'm concerned. And with about 30 minutes before landing, let's have a little chit-chat about this flight and how much it all cost as well. The cabin was beautiful, the food was quite good, and as for the staff...
You know what I love about British Airways? The way they greet their passengers as though they're personally responsible for the death of Princess Diana. Don't they? You go...
In all seriousness though, the staff on this flight were an absolute delight. They were professional and courteous and actually quite personable. I have absolutely no complaints whatsoever. Now as for the cost of this flight...
So I don't know about you guys, but I find British Airways to be outrageously expensive. The cash cost from London Heathrow to Toronto was around $10,000, which seems stupidly expensive. But of course, I was able to use points. Luckily, there are often aviation deals, especially through Amex, and there was a 30% back point deal when you transfer from Amex to British Airways. So normally it would have been 80,000 British Airways avios, but of course I got 30% of those points deposited back. The fees, of course, because we were flying out of Heathrow, were much higher, so it was around $400 in taxes and fees.
And as we begin our descent into Toronto, if I were to describe British Airways, I would say that it's good, but not excellent. I would happily take them again if it was convenient for me to do so, and if the price was right, of course, but I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to fly with them either. Anyways, thanks for joining me on board today, and please do subscribe and like the video if you'd like to see more vlogs like this one.